Do you guys get the notification that it's recording?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Should be. Wait, so okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, hi guys. So today's gonna be our first session for Hackschool. So Hackschool's gonna last for 8 weeks until it will last until week 8. So yeah, let's just get started first. So today we'll be going through intro to HTML and CSS. So wait, just give me a second. Ah. Yeah, so fill out the sign up form first while you Yeah, so I'll give everyone like 3 minutes to fill this up first. Okay. Yeah, so this is our membership code. So you guys can go to the link members.uclaacm.com and then you can put in the membership code, which is basic hacking. Yeah, so just fill it up so we can get some points and you can get some points for yourself as well. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this will be our basic curriculum that we'll be going through for the next few weeks. So we'll be starting in week 2, so that'll be today, and today we'll be going through intro to HTML and CSS, and then we'll be continuing this workshop every single week until week 8, where we'll have our deployment and showcase. Yeah, so for today, Hackschool is going to be a workshop that is going to be for people who are completely new to coding. So whether you're completely new or you just want to brush up with some simple or more basic web development skills, so Hackschool is going to be the place you want to be. And our goal for the end of this workshop is for you to have some form of project that you can show and put on your resume, or just have something to show, and also just use to explore your creativity and just explore how you want to use web development going forward. Yeah. So our goal would be creating your own website, but you can do whatever you want. So whether it's going to be for your personal portfolio or a page for your hobbies, or maybe a site dedicated to your favorite TV show, it can be for anything. So today's workshop is designed to give you the basic tools that you can apply however you want in order to achieve in order to achieve a website of your desire. Yeah. So it's more about coding and more about expressing your own creativity through web development and building something that would be uniquely yours and for you to showcase in the future. Yeah. So why web dev? So just to go through why we're interested in web development, I'm sure that you guys know that websites and web applications are kind of part of your daily life. So can you imagine a world without websites where imagine instead of like scrolling through Instagram in class, you're like actually maybe like trying to find photos of people or something like that. It's just not an accurate representation of how we live life right now. So definitely web development is very important for all of us and it's part of our day-to-day lives right now. So I think it's really important to kind of get a basic skill set or just have a basic understanding of the architecture behind a basic front-end website and what things go into it in order to build it. Yeah. So just a bit more about our workshop structure. So right now we're just going to go through a bit of an introduction of what our workshop is going to be like. And then we're going to go through 2 main topics today, which will be intro to HTML as well as intro to CSS. And then between each of these introductions, you'll take about a 5 to 10 minute checkpoint in order for you to kind of use what we've just taught, and then we'll repeat that for the next topic. And then since Shiu mentioned earlier that while our sessions from 6 to 8, actually our workshop's gonna last roughly until 7. So between 7 to 8, we can kind of use what we learned today and apply it to your website. And then we'll be here to help you out if you guys are facing any issues implementing what we just taught. Yeah, so our work session will be between 7 to 8. Yeah, so since we do have our work session later on, so we recommend you not code during this workshop because we'll have small checkpoints along the way. So I think right now during the workshop, we can just pay attention and try to learn all the basic things, especially if you're not familiar or you have never done web development before. And then we'll be at the end, during the work session, you can kind of clarify and we'll share the slides with you so that you guys can go through it yourself and you can try to implement what we just taught. Yeah. So this would be the link to our GitHub, which would be our demo, and as well as the slides. So that will be the slides that we're going through right now. Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of a preview. So by the end of this workshop, we are aiming for you to be able to build a website that maybe not exactly like this, but this is what we built with the basic skills that we'll be teaching. So we'll be able to insert some photos, and also we have like a navigation bar, which we can go to and kind of go to different pages of our website, as well as like adding different colors, different styles, and maybe like adding a link for you to kind of link to something else. Yeah. Okay. So that's just the basic example of a website, which we will have up in our demo in our GitHub for you guys to check out and maybe take inspiration for when you're building your own personal site. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone has scanned those links. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, I shall wait. Sorry. Okay, I'll post the link of this for the slides inside our yeah, I'll post it in the Discord, so we'll move on for now. Yeah. So just to go through a little basic things about web development. So what happens when we search a URL? So before we jump into the code, let's get a better understanding of what goes behind the scenes. So what happens is that your browser sends a request to your server, which sends back the website's HTML and CSS and JavaScript file. So then the browser would process and display the contents. So today we'll be focusing on the first two, which is HTML and CSS. So just a little bit more about web development. So there's two different parts to web development. Definitely there's front end and there's back end. And I'm sure you guys all heard about full stack. So that's where you do both front end and back end. So today for our workshop, we're going to be focusing on a front end website. So front end is basically everything that the users interact with when they visit a website. So this includes things like the text, images, buttons, and navigation bar. So basically what you see when you look at the website and things that you actually click on or watch. So if we think about our favorite website, for example, like Instagram or something, everything we see, like if we're watching the stories or things that we click on, all these are the front end of the website. So they are built using HTML and CSS. And then moving on to backend, while we're not going to be working on backend during this workshop, it's good to kind of get a better understanding of what exactly backend is. So backend is where data is stored and processed. So it's like when you log in or retrieve information from a database, that's basically everything that happens in the backend. So while we won't cover backend today, it's something that you can learn more about in the future. Okay. So these are the three basic languages that people will kind of mention when we're talking about web development. So the first one would be HTML, which we mentioned before. So that creates the structure and the content of our website. So basically everything such as the headings, the paragraphs, and the images are all controlled by the HTML. And then CSS controls the style. So it controls how your website looks and includes fonts, colors, and layouts. And then lastly, we have JavaScript and TypeScript. So for our workshop we'll be focusing on TypeScript, but people do use JavaScript pretty often as well. So it adds the interactivity of the website, like it makes the buttons clickable and forms it allows forms to submit data. So we'll cover that later, but we'll be moving on to HTML and CSS. Yeah. So just a bit more, since our workshop is gonna be building a React website. So just a little bit of an intro to React, which we'll be going into more another day. So React is a powerful JavaScript library, which is used by many websites for building fast, responsive user interfaces. So what exactly is a library? So a library is a set of pre-written codes that can make programming quicker. So we don't have to recode all these things, and it's already accessible to us through the library. So it definitely does make things easier for us rather than making it pretty impossible for a regular person to go off and code their own website. And then when we think about user interfaces, which is UI, I'm sure you guys heard about UI UX. So it's things that the user can interact with on the web page. So just a bit about React. It's definitely been growing a lot in popularity over the past few years. So as you can see, React has been used a lot more since 2016 to today. And then so if we look here, these are just some websites which are built using React. So as you can see, so many popular websites like Netflix, Instagram, Facebook, all these are things that we use regularly, and they all use React, which is why we are going to be teaching React in this workshop. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to web development in general. So let's just get started now. Okay, but first let's download some stuff. So if you guys do not have Visual Studio Code yet, just make sure to get that downloaded first. So Visual Studio Code will be a text editor, which we will be using through this workshop. So what exactly is a text editor? So a text editor would be a way for us to edit our code. So we can't just edit our code inside our, like, for example, Word document or Google Docs. So that's not going to work for us. So we definitely need a text editor or some way to edit our code. And it will also help us code in an easier way, because it will make sure it will highlight all the different syntaxes, and it will make us more aware if we have any syntax issues. So if you don't have it yet, do download it through this link, and make sure to download the blue one and not the purple one. So if you guys have the wrong one downloaded, make sure to go back and change it to the blue one. Yeah. So just moving on. So just a bit more about HTML. So what exactly is HTML? So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Languages, and it's basically the backbone of all of our websites. So it structures our content with text, and so that we know what different parts of our code means. So hypertext stands for basically any kind of text that has a link. So, and then markup, which means just like things that we annotated. So that's just what HTML means, which is a little bit arbitrary, but we just wanted to go through it a little bit. Yeah. So HTML is just text with some extra text. So that means that, for example, if we see here the example hello, it's tagged with a paragraph, and then submit is tagged with a button. So that means it's going to be a button. And then here we know that this is an image. So it just basically describes the structure and the content of the page. So that's just the basic gist about HTML. Yeah. So what does HTML look like in practice? So for example, if this is a piece of content that we want to put on our website. So we want welcome to Hackschool to be our title, and then we want the topics that we will be covering to be a paragraph, and then maybe HTML, the different topics that we're covering, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, intro to React, events and states. We want all of these to be lists, and then click me to be a button that we can click on. So how would this look like in code? So this means that first we'll tag our welcome to Hackschool with a H1 tag, which means like header 1. And then here are some topics we're covering. We'll have a paragraph text, and then HTML, all these will be tagged with LI, which means lists. And then the click me will be tagged with a button. So this is just a general gist of what a HTML, how we would tag a different text in our HTML file. So this is how it would look like if we don't add any styling to it. Yeah. So how do we create a folder in VS Code for us to put in our HTML code? So we can create a folder anywhere on our computer. So first, what we want to do is we can go to our desktop, And then we can right click on our desktop and create a new folder. And then next we can click on our Visual Studio Code. And then once we're inside Visual Studio Code, we can click on File and then we click Open Folder. So here we can access our folder through VS Code. Okay. So inside this folder, what we want to do is add an index.html file, which will allow us to which is basically where we are going to be putting our HTML code. So this is the basic structure of a HTML file. So here we can see that head will be where the metadata and all of the links to the style sheets go. So style sheets would be something we'll cover later on in CSS, which will determine the style of our HTML site. And then body will be where our extra content goes. So it will come together to show. Later we will go through this and show you how it looks like all together. So at the top, we also see this, which is doc type HTML. So it just declares the document type with version HTML5. Yeah. So how do we open our HTML file after we have coded it into a browser? So what we want to do is we go into the file that we have created and then into the folder we have created, and then on our index.html file, we want to right click on that. We want to right click on that file, and then we want to open with Google Chrome. And then if we make any changes into our index.html file, we will press Command S when we're still in Command S for Mac when we're still in VS Code in order to save these changes. And then if we go back to our Chrome page, we can refresh the browser for changes to show. She may help me call back the delivery. Yeah, it's next. Yeah, so here we're going to have a little bit of a demo to go through what we've just learned. Yeah. So how do we create all of the things that we've just stated? So what we want to do is in our desktop, we can just right click and we press new folder. So let's say today I want to name my folder demo. And then under demo, what I want to do is I want to go back into my Visual Studio Code first. So here, this is what it's going to generally look like. And then we can press open. And then, we'll go to our desktop. And then since demo is the file that I want to look at today, I'm just going to open demo. Yeah. And then here, so this is where my demo file is. So basically everything here will be inside my demo folder. So here I want to create a new file and call it index.html. So this is how we create a new file. So let's say here we want to create a little bit just to see write in some text for us to see. So first we want to declare the doc type. So doc type HTML. So this declares that the document type is HTML. And then next we're gonna put in our HTML tag. Yeah, so it means that everything inside here will be HTML. And then next we need to add our head. So and then after that, we'll add our body. Yeah, so do you have any questions? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, is that better? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah. Did they say anything? So now I think we can do a little bit of a 5-minute checkpoint. So just make sure that you guys are up to speed at this point. So make sure you have all of your VS Code and everything downloaded and that you have created your first index.html file. I'm gonna pause this. Yeah. Yeah, wait, give me a second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so okay, now we can move on a little bit. So we can cover a little bit more about the tags. So these are some popular tags that we'll be using inside our HTML file. So for example, the title, which will be the title of the page, which appears on the browser tab. And then also div, which stands for divider, and then the different headers like H1, H2, as well as P for paragraph. So I attach a few more, which will be at the here. So you guys can go take a look. So here's just a little bit more about lists. So list is how we kind of list out the different things. So the two different types of lists that we want to take note of. One will be UL, so that stands for unordered list. And then the second will be OL, which stands for ordered list. So as you can see for unordered list, it means that it's just a bullet point, so there's no like order to it. And then the second one would be 1, 2, 3, so that's some form of order to it. So we will use these two different types of lists differently. For example, if we're just like stating some stuff, we might want to use an unordered list, versus if like let's say we're doing a website where we are writing a recipe or something like that, we might want to do an ordered list instead. So that will help us like list out very clearly what steps we're looking at. Yeah. Okay, here are some tags for links and images. So if you want to put in an image, we will use this tag, which is IMG, which stands for image. And then inside the quotation marks here, which says URL, that's where we're going to put the path of the file or the image that we want to insert. And then the alternate inside the quotation marks will be what would show up if they can't find our file. So that's some things you want to take note of. And then here inside the reference, the URL will be the link that we want to hyperlink or attach a link to our text. Yeah, here are some other tags, but I'm just gonna move on first. Yep, so I think now we'll just do another short demo on like how we want to build a site like that. So if we're to go back into the file that we already built, so I think I mentioned earlier that what we need inside our header will be the title. So that's the title that's going to show up inside our browser. So let's say here, I'm going to add a title tag. And then let's say I want to call my title, my browser, my profile page. Yeah. And then moving on in our body, that's where we're going to add the different content of what we want to add. So say here, let me just, okay. Say here in our body, we want to add a header. So here we can add in the tag header. Yeah. And then inside our header, we can specify different types of tag. So if we want our main header to be H1, so let's just call our main header will be H1. Yes. And then let's say we want the top of our page to say like, hello, my name is Azel. And then moving forward, now we can add different parts to our content. So maybe here we can add a section. So what sections do is that they separate out different parts of our content so that we can section it out basically. So here, let's say I want to add an image. So I'm going to drag an image. So in our file here, I'm going to drag in an image, which maybe I want to add into my website. So that I'll put in the image tag, which will write image, and then src, and then I'll put the path of the image that I want to add in. So since here it's in the main directory where my HTML file is, I can just put in the name of the file, which will be hack logo.png. And then I'll need to put in an alternate name for when they can't find this file that I want to add in. So this is gonna be what shows up if they can't find the photo. So let's just call it hack logo. And then let's say I want to add a bit of a text. So if I want to add a text, I'm going to put it as a paragraph. And then let's say I just write in a little bit of a description. So I am a web development enthusiast. Something like that. Okay. So now that we have one section about a photo and maybe a brief description about me, let's say I want to add another section which is more about me. So I'll create another section. And then since under this section, I want the header to be more about me, but I don't want it to be as big as my initial header, which is H1. I'm gonna add a H2 tag, which would be a different size. And then I'll write more about me. And then say I want to write some fun facts about myself. So I want to list out a few fun facts. So since there's no particular order to this, I'm just going to do an unordered list. So there'll be UL for unordered list. And then here I'm going to write out. So I'll write list LI inside. And then I'll write like, let's say my hobby is cooking. And then let's say my favorite, list. And then I write my favorite color is say blue. Yeah, so that's gonna be like a very, very simple HTML site. So how is this gonna look like if we were to open it up in Chrome or some other yeah, so how is this gonna look like if we open it up online? So first make sure to save it. So if there's the little like dot on top, it means that your like here, it means that your page hasn't been saved yet. So make sure to Command S and save it. And then if we were to go to where our file is, we can open it up. And this is gonna be like how it looks like. So this is like just a really basic site, yeah, of like, I don't think you guys can see the bottom on Zoom, but yeah, so the bottom has like a, let me just zoom in for you guys to see. Yeah, so it's just like a list of like my hobbies and what I've added in. So that's basic of like how you create a HTML site. So I think here we can, oops, let me, yeah. So I think we can take a short 5-minute checkpoint for you guys to add a bit of fun facts that you want to have inside your website and just kind of build out a header and maybe some lists and things that you want to add in just to see whether you can save it and whether you can open it on your browser. Yeah, so I think most of you guys are okay, and there doesn't seem to be any issue. So I'm gonna move forward first. Yeah. So now that we kind of basically know what HTML is, we can move on to um yeah, so how remember that HTML only represents the content. So we can move on to CSS, which creates the rules for the style of the content and how we want to present it. So what does CSS stand for? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And basically it controls the look and layout of our web pages through rules that we can define to give the elements in our page some style. So it defines properties like the colors, fonts, sizes, and the positions of the things that we have. And then the style sheet is a group of style rules that can change the web page that is presented. Yeah. So what does cascading in CSS stand for? So it just means that the last defined style is going to be the one that takes priority and it will override the other style. So that's just a general definition of CSS and what it means. Yeah. So let's just take a basic look at what CSS stands for. So there are three main of the basic syntax of CSS. So there are three main parts to CSS. So the first one will be the selector. So we're gonna select which type in the HTML file that we want to change. And then the second will be the property. So let's say we want to change H1. So what do we want to change about that? So here our property is color. And then next we'll have the value, which is what we want to change it to. So here, let's say our value is red. So this is kind of how the syntax will look like. And then here's an example of how it will look like in a CSS file. So these are some basic CSS properties that are very commonly used. So some of the options that I think are used pretty often would be like font family, font size, color, as well as like maybe the margin, as well as like background color or yeah, or like other things like box sizing and position. So these are just some examples, but I've linked the list over here, which you guys can kind of take a look at. So there are a lot more things that we can change outside of this. These are just some common ones. So you can check this out at your own time. Yeah. So how do we create a CSS file? So to create a CSS file, we'll have to create a new file within the same folder that we created earlier. So it'll be in the same directory as our index.html file. And then after creating our CSS file and kind of putting in all of the rules that we want, we'll have to link that CSS file to our HTML file. So where do we link it? So within the HTML file, in header and under title, we will add the following line. So it says link, and then we put in our style sheet, and then we reference, and then that will be the name of the CSS file that we created. So usually it's called styles.css. Yeah. So the first part of this, after link, it tells the browser that this is style sheet. So it kind of tells them what type of file it's looking at. And then this part, the second part will kind of specify the specific path to our CSS file. So since we're just putting it into the same directory, we'll put styles.css since there's no specific path that we're taking right now, since it's in the same file. But then if we are putting our CSS file in another part of our directory or in another file within that folder, then we might have to put in a different path. So within our styles.css file, that's where we're going to add our rules to control how our HTML website is going to look like. So what if I want to be more specific with my style? So I don't just want to change the different like header like H1, H2, or just like change the style of a paragraph. I want to make it more specific. So what I can do is use classes and IDs. So these are the different syntaxes for classes and IDs. So for class selectors, we have a dot in front and then you put in the class name. So this is arbitrary. You can name it whatever you want, but for here, we're just going to call it my class. And then we'll have the same things here, which is we want to write in the property and the value. So that's the same for ID, but instead of a dot, we put a hash and then it says my ID, but you can name it whatever you want. And then we also change the property and the value. So these class and ID names are arbitrary. And so what's the difference between a class and an ID? So a class can be applied to multiple elements, while an ID is unique to one element. So Yeah. So how do we use class and ID rules? So for any HTML element, you can add the class and or n/or the ID attributes to apply the CSS styles to that. So if we were to use both a class and an ID, if we were to apply both a class and ID to the same HTML element, the ID would take precedence over the class. So that's just some basic information about class and IDs. So here's an example of how we would want to use classes. So in our CSS file, maybe you want to define our class as middle, and then we'll put in some rules that we want to apply. So the first one will be text align, and then, well, that means that we want to align our text, and how do we want to align it? So we want to align it towards the center, and then the display will be as a block, and then the margin is auto. So how do we apply this inside our HTML file? So in our paragraph, we will specify that for this specific paragraph and not for all of the paragraphs, we want to align it towards the middle. So inside the paragraph tag, we'll add in class equals to, and then we'll put in middle. So now this entire piece of content will be aligned towards the middle. And then it'll be kind of the same for IDs. So let's say in our CSS file, we'll say that we'll call our ID raspberry, and then what it does is that it changes the color to something else. And then in our HTML file, within the list tag, which is, let's say, one thing that we want to change, we can write that the ID equals to raspberry, and that would change the text here, which is raspberry jam, into this color, which is like, yeah, whatever color we specify. So that's the basic ways of using classes and IDs. So just moving on a little bit more, we can also use CSS to control the layout of our file. So how do we do this? We can use something called Flexbox. So Flexbox is a layout tool in CSS that makes it easier to design flexible and responsive page layouts. So it's especially useful when arranging elements in rows or columns. So we can use Flexbox to align our contents on the page. So if we see here, for example, if you use like display flex, which it's a little bit small for you guys to see, but we can kind of control how we want to align this. So we can stretch it, or we can align it all towards the top, or like all towards the bottom. So that's kind of a basic overview of how we would use Flexbox. Yeah. So since in CSS, what we want to do is we want to style our website the way we want to, right? So you won't be just confined to whatever fonts you have right now. So we can always get more fonts through Google Fonts. So how do we get more fonts? You can look up the font that you want specifically on Google Fonts, and then you can select the specific font that you want. And then we import it and copy that import statement. And then we paste that import statement at the top of our CSS file. And then that means that we can use the font. Yeah, so that's just a basic overview of how you can get more fonts on Google, which you can then implement into your CSS file and apply to your HTML file later on. Yeah, so now here's a little bit of a demo of how we might want to create a CSS file that to apply to our HTML, to give our HTML file some more design. Yeah, so yeah. Okay, so here what we want to do is inside our demo folder, we want to create a new file. So we're going to call it styles.css. So that's the typical naming convention. And then here we can talk about the different things that we have to put inside our CSS file. So as we went through earlier, we'll need to decide on the 3 different factors. So let me just go back. Yeah. So we have to write our selector as well as our property, and lastly our value. So let's say here I want to change my body. So that's going to be my selector. And then let's say one thing I want to change would be the font. So how I change that is I use font family. And then let's say I want to change it to Arial, which is, and it's Sarah. Yeah, so that's how I'm gonna change my font family. And then moving on to background color. So here we can cover a little bit more about hex codes. So what hex codes are is that it's a way to specify what color you want. So for example, here we can just tag in white. So That's a way to enter in a color that we want. Or we can also use hex codes for more specific colors. So for white, our color is actually F F F F F, if I'm not wrong. 6. Yeah. So this is also white. Yeah. And then we can also do text align, which we kind of went through a little bit just now. So this tells us that for our body, we want to align our text in the center. Yeah, so remember your semicolons at the end of the line as well. And then here, when we write color, so there's a difference between background color and color. So color will be the text. And here, let's say we want to specify it to be color 333. Yeah, so that's kind of a brief overview of how we would write a CSS rule. So let's say we want to add a little bit more. So let's say we want to change our header. So we will specify our selector as header, and then we want to change our background color. So later on when I run this, you can see how the body and the header will have a different background color and what that would look like. So let's say I want to specify it to be a specific color. So here I'll use my hex code, since I can find a specific color that I want rather than just putting in white. Yeah. And then here for the color of my font, I just want it to be white so that I can see it against my background. Yeah. And then let's say for my H1 text, I want to change the font size. So I want to make sure that it's like not too big or not too small. So and it looks good with the rest of my site. So here I can specify the font size. And then looking specifically, if I want to create a class that I want to apply for my image, and then I can put in the width that I want my image to look like, which is 150 pixels. And then also the height, let's say I want it to be the same size. Because just now we saw that my photo was quite big without controlling all of this height and width. And then let's say I want to add a border, and yeah, so I want it to be a circle, so I put in a radius. So let me radius. So let's say I set it as 50%. So that's kind of like generally how a CSS file might look like. So now that we have a CSS file with all of our rules, we need to make sure to link it back to our HTML file so that it knows what style rules to look at. So yeah. So how we do that is we go back to our HTML file. And then remember that we have to link it at the bottom of our title, in our head, but below our title. So here we can link it. So we write link, and then we put in what it is. So it's a style sheet. So style sheet. And then we have to put in our path, which would be styles.css. Yeah, so this is how we are gonna link our CSS file to our HTML file. But as you remember earlier, we also created a class which we want to apply specifically. So how do we apply a class into our the image which we want to change later? So which we wanted to change. So how we do that is under section, we put in class, and then we write equals to profile. So since just now we already named our class as profile, so this means that everything under our in this section specifically will apply this rule, this specific class rule, to make it more so that we can be more specific in our styles. So here I can save this index.html file after I changed it, and then I can go and open my profile page. So yeah, so if I reload it, so this is how the CSS will help me style my website and kind of allow me to kind of customize it. So yeah, so as you can see, we center everything to the center using text align, and then we also adjusted the size of our photo and also gave like a background color, and we changed the font. So there's just some simple ways which we can use CSS to personalize our HTML site. Yeah. So I think, okay, yeah. So now I think we can take before that, I think before we take our checkpoint, because now it's about time for our open session for you guys to kind of ask any questions and work a bit more on your website. Do you guys have any questions on what we just went through and how to apply what we just learned? Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, let me just go back to the file. So if we have the demo here, we see our index.html file, right? Let me just zoom in a little bit. Oh, yeah. So we have our index.html file. You can just right click and you press open with Google Chrome. But actually, if you just click on it, generally Google Chrome should be your default browser. So it would open up, but this is like a way to like be more specific about it. Does anyone have any other questions? Yeah, if not, I think we can start, you guys can start working on your own websites and try to implement the style, the CSS file to your HTML file and give your HTML file a little bit more style for you guys to use. Right. To make sure we share this with everyone. These are our socials, which you guys can take a look at. So this is our Instagram, our Hack website, as well as our Discord. So we'll be posting our recordings as well as the slides and the GitHub link into our Discord for you guys to see. And then, yeah, so these are just some of our socials. So make sure to follow us on Instagram and stay connected. Yeah, sure.